Welcome back, y'all, to the Nourishing Women podcast, your go-to podcast to get your period back and get pregnant. I'm Victoria Myers, your host, period recovery specialist, fertility dietitian, and owner of the virtual coaching practice, Nourishing Minds Nutrition, where we work together to restore your fertility. Happy Thanksgiving week to those of you who celebrate. I know for myself, I love using this week to really spend some time thinking about how grateful I am for the life I get to live. And of course, a huge part of that is this very business that I own. And I just want to take a moment of appreciation to say thank you so much to my clients, my community, to you for following along, for being here with me every other week. It means so much to me. And I hope that every single episode, you get so much out of it to help you feel your best, to improve your hormones, to get your period back and get pregnant. Now, today's episode is exactly that. This is such an incredible episode with guest expert Jillian Greaves. A little bit about Jillian. She is a functional dietitian and women's health specialist. She's the owner of the private practice Jillian Greaves Functional Nutrition and Wellness, the creator of the PCOS Root Reversal Program. Jillian provides comprehensive nutrition and lifestyle counseling to women with a special emphasis on PCOS, fertility, hormone balance, and digestive health. Jillian and her team help women identify the root causes of their hormone and digestive symptoms using advanced lab testing, personal nutrition, supportive lifestyle therapies as the first line of intervention. It is her mission to empower women to take back control of their health, reclaim their confidence, and to experience life at its fullest potential. Obviously, that's a message I can definitely get down with. We're going to jump straight into this episode with Jillian. First, though, I just want to remind you that we are in the middle of our Black Friday sale for our Fertility Clarity Package. This is a perfect step for you if you are looking to understand the root cause, the hidden imbalances that are causing your missing or irregular period, making it difficult for you to get pregnant right now. A Fertility Clarity Package includes a root cause investigation and a customized roadmap so that you know exactly what to do to get your period back and restore your fertility so that you can get pregnant in 2026. It is on sale for $400 off with the code Black Friday now until next Monday. So the sale ends so soon and we only have a handful of spots left. I'll also talk about that at the end of this episode. For now, let's jump into this incredible guest episode with Jillian. Hello, Jillian. Welcome to the Nourishing Women podcast. I am elated that you're here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Yes, I cannot wait to nerd out. I know I shared this with you already, but for the listeners, I think this conversation is needed. We need to talk about this. And it's such a simple, easy way you can support your health. So the focus today is circadian rhythm, but let's just start first, Jillian. Who are you? What is the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jillian Greaves. I'm a functional medicine dietitian that specializes in women's health. So specifically, me and my team support women with identifying and addressing the root causes of their hormone and digestive health symptoms naturally. So utilizing nutrition, lifestyle strategies, mind-body practices, supplements, really to support the body back to balance. And we work with a variety of women and kind of similar to you, women that are struggling with, irregular or absent cycles, fertility challenges, PCOS, endometriosis, and women's health is sort of my jam. And I have a virtual private practice where, we see women really across the US.
Yeah, a lot of similarities, that's for sure. I'd love to hear, because I know for me personally, at least, I got into this work because of my own period loss journey and just determined to figure out how to get it back. And it definitely led me to having this extreme, I would say, passion for period recovery and fertility work. But what about you? What led you to women's health specifically?
Yeah, so same here in terms of my own health struggles and experiences really kind of leading me to this work. And to make a very long story short, a little over a decade ago, I was in grad school getting my master's in nutrition. I was working full-time in a clinical research setting. And I was also running half marathons, HIIT training 5 days a week, eating predominantly a plant-based diet.
God, why are all dietitians the same?
Right. You know where this is going.
Yeah.
So, I was burning the candle at both ends, and, my life was stressful. My diet and lifestyle habits were adding stress, to my life, to my body. And I had also been on hormonal birth control for a little over 10 years at the time. And I had been put on birth control at a young age for period cramps, heavy periods, and hadn't really thought about it since. So I sought out support from my providers, my PCP, because I started experiencing symptoms like head hair loss, acne. I was experiencing eczema. I was anxious. I wasn't sleeping well. And on paper, I'm like, what the heck? I'm doing, all the things, right. Or so I thought at the time. And, my PCP didn't really have much to support me with and, sent me to the derm and said, hey, get, topical steroids or, see this provider for, treatment for that symptom. And that was really frustrating for me. And I wasn't willing to accept that these symptoms were happening for no reason. And, my provider basically said, you're the picture of health, your labs look great, be on your way. So, was not willing to accept that these symptoms were happening for no reason, and started to really dive deeper into understanding female physiology, understanding the hormonal birth control that I'd been on for 10 plus years without even kind of understanding the impacts or how it was, working in my body, and decided to take myself off birth control. And at that time, everything went haywire. So my period was absent. When it did come back, it was terrible, and all of my symptoms got so much worse. And I really continued to struggle to find answers and to get support for what I was dealing with. And that really led me to, again, kind of immerse myself in understanding female physiology, which was not part of my training at all in undergrad or grad school or, becoming a dietitian. And, I found the functional nutrition, functional medicine space, which really resonated with me in terms of let's dig deeper. Let's understand the why behind these symptoms and what's going on in your body. So over the next few years, I, was experimenting a lot. I was doing a lot of learning, and over time, I was able to get my period back in regular. So ovulating regularly, eliminating my period related symptoms, clearing up my skin, and ultimately resolving my symptoms. But it took me a long time, a lot of trial and error, kind of piecing things together and feeling very alone and very isolated on my journey. And, after that experience, talking with friends and colleagues, there were a lot of women struggling with similar issues and feeling like they had nowhere to turn, and birth control was kind of their only option. And so that really motivated me to, seek out advanced training in functional nutrition and women's health to ultimately really provide women with the support that I so deeply wished I had had when I was in the trenches and struggling and feeling like I had nowhere to turn.
Yeah, I wonder if the birth control to functional medicine dietitian is like a well-known fact at this point. Like we all decided to get off birth control, had every issue happen after that, and that led us to our practices. And
Yep.
it's interesting how many of our clients, I'm sure the same is true for you too, Jillian, of how many of our clients are having the same experience, right? They're getting off birth control. For my people, it's where is my period? Like I'm trying to get pregnant right now. Where did my period go? And I know for me, similar to you, it took me 14 months to get my period back. And like with my clients, it takes such a small amount of time because we took that trial and error out for them, doing what hopefully I never had to go through.
Exactly.
And overall, I think with the similarities in we work with slightly different, like similar, but also different types of conditions with hormone health. And though not willing to accept just what is, that's what resonates so much with me of what you shared of like, yeah, I'm not willing to accept. And I think the people listening to this podcast feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's my feeling too that there is nothing more stressful than experiencing symptoms or having your period be totally MIA and just not understanding why, right?
Mhm.
And having to guess or throw things at the wall and hope something sticks, trying all the diets. And it's just the symptoms themselves or the lack of, period, that is stressful. But then also just not understanding why. So I think, both you and I really work to remove that stress for women and to create that path towards healing, so women don't feel alone and they have answers and it doesn't take, 2 years to get their period back and we can, do these things in a timely way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that so much. And one of the things that I love about and this will evolve into our conversation today, but where I love where hormone health has gone is in the beginning. I remember when I first started to immerse myself in it, I lost my period like a decade ago too. So that's about a decade is when I started this journey too. I feel like everything was about eliminating foods and taking all these supplements. And whilst that plays a role sometimes in some places, I don't know. To me, it feels like it's really evolved where we're talking about things like metabolism and nervous system and circadian rhythm. And that's what we're going to talk about today is like, how can we actually support your hormone health in a true foundational way? And if and when you need to do like some of the more complex stuff, yeah, we can do that. But like your foundations need to be taken care of first. For my people, that's making sure they have a monthly period. And circadian rhythm support can even support that too. So let's just begin the conversation. You're our expert today. I even have like a million questions myself because I recently did a training and it was talking about contact. So I got all the questions for you. Let's just start first and foremost though with like what is your circadian rhythm and why the heck does it matter?
Yes, love this question. So let's break it down. So circadian rhythms are physical, mental, and behavioral changes or shifts that follow roughly a 24-hour cycle or schedule. So the term circadian rhythm is basically describing kind of this 24-hour pattern that all of our internal biological processes are operating on. Simply put, I always like to say that circadian rhythms are basically making sure that everything in the body is happening in the right place at the right time. So circadian rhythms kind of run the show. Circadian rhythms regulate our sleep-wake cycle, which I think is kind of the biggest thing that people might think about if they hear, the term circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythms do regulate the sleep-wake cycle, but they also regulate immune function and thyroid function, mood, cognition, hormone secretion and hormone fluctuations, digestion. So all of these things are circadian and are regulated by circadian rhythms. To break it down a little bit further, and kind of make this a little bit more tangible. So we know that all processes in the body kind of operate on this 24-hour cycle, right? Um, we have a master clock in our brain, which is referred to as it's a big long name, suprachiasmatic nucleus or SCN. So it's this master clock in the
Oh,
brain.
act like you didn't know that one right off the tip of your tongue. You're like,
I'm
oh,
not usually
actually.
saying it out loud, so, tripping over myself here. But so this is the master clock in the brain. And the master clock in the brain basically receives information from the outside world, and then it communicates that information with the rest of the body. And so the master clock is sending signals to other systems, other organs, and telling everything in the body what to do and when to do it. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely.
So when it comes to circadian rhythms, the master clock in our brain is influenced by just a handful of key external factors. Light regulation, so light and dark exposure being the primary one, but also when we sleep and also when we eat. So these external signals are kind of inputs that influence that master clock, and then the master clock is going to communicate, that information with the rest of the body.
All right, let's break down each of those. So, our master clock is dictated by first and foremost our light and dark exposure. What do we need to know as far as like what type of sun exposure and when should we avoiding certain exposure like blue light? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So with light regulation, to even take a step back and to explain why this is so important, particularly in our modern world. So, in the olden days, people would wake up with the sun, right? And then they were outside, exposed to natural sunlight for a lot of the day. And then when it got dark out at night, they'd be winding down and going to bed. So people really operated with the sun ultimately, and, with kind of natural fluctuations with light and dark. In our modern world, things are a little bit harder because there's a lot working against us where, for many of us, we wake up in the morning and instead of, natural sunlight exposure, we might be on our computer, diving into work, on our phone, and spending very little time outside. a lot of us work, desk jobs, and we're on a computer all day, and we're exposed to bright, artificial overhead lights, very little natural sunlight. And then in the evening, when it gets dark, we're not winding down as the sun goes down, right? That's when we're flipping on the bright overhead lights, right? We're on our phones, the TV's on, we're on our tablets, our computers. And, all of these disruptions with light and dark is essentially confusing for the brain. So it confuses that master clock in the brain, and it has a really big snowball effect on every system and organ in the body, and particularly with things like hormonal secretion. So that's kind of light and dark exposure in a nutshell, where a lot of, kind of the infrastructure of our modern world is making it more difficult or leading to more circadian rhythm disruption. So, and it's not that we can all quit our jobs and like go be farmers and operate with the sun, even though that sounds like so lovely. But ultimately, ideally, what we want to aim for is, can we get a little bit of natural sunlight in the morning, within an hour or two after waking? Can we take some breaks throughout the day to pop outside, get a little bit of natural sunlight, or even sitting near, a sunny window? In the evening at night, do we have the ability to adjust our environment a little bit to be more conducive or supportive of our circadian rhythms? Meaning, can we turn off the big bright overhead lights and maybe turn on floor lamps or table lamps or dim our lights? Can we, maybe throw on a pair of amber colored blue light blockers that filter out blue light if we, need to be on, our computer or we're watching TV at night? Could we dedicate a little bit of device free time pre-bed, in the evening to really kind of take us away from blue light emitting devices? Again, all of these bright lights, the blue lights, absorbed through our eyes and impacting that master clock. And to explain to why that's important, especially from a, hormone and fertility perspective, circadian rhythms, again, kind of run the show in the body as a whole. But when it comes to, the menstrual cycle and fertility, circadian rhythms are influencing hormones like our LH, our luteinizing hormone, and our FSH, in terms of these really key hormones that kind of govern and regulate the menstrual cycle. So disruptions to circadian rhythms can actually alter the secretion of these hormones that support, follicle maturation and regular ovulation. Exposure to blue light at night in particular, and lack of sunlight exposure in the morning, is tied to low melatonin levels. So melatonin is something we also typically think about when we're, thinking of sleep or our sleep-wake cycle. But melatonin actually plays a big role with also governing some of these hormones that regulate the menstrual cycle. So melatonin is part of what regulates our gonadotropin-releasing hormone in the hypothalamus, which is going to communicate to release, the LH, the FSH. Melatonin is also an antioxidant that is found in high amounts in follicular fluid. So it plays an important role with egg quality, with endometrial receptivity in terms of like supporting implantation. So if we have all this bright light at night, no sunlight in the morning, and our melatonin is tanked, this can, contribute to issues with cycle regularity and, fertility issues as a whole. We also know that issues with light exposure or disruption to light exposure can impact our thyroid function and thyroid hormone conversion, which is so key for supporting, a healthy menstrual cycle, regular ovulation, and fertility.
Let's clear something up right here, right now. You are not broken. You are not behind, and you are not the exception. The number one reason I see women stuck without ovulation, periods, and unable to get and stay pregnant is because they haven't addressed the root cause of what is causing their missing or irregular period. When we test for it and we give your body everything that it's been missing, things shift fast. Like Lauren, who 2 weeks into her fertility cleared package saw her estrogen levels triple, and Randy, who within 1 month of receiving her fertility clarity package saw that positive pregnancy test she'd been dreaming of. Again, use the code Black Friday at checkout for $400 off now through December 1st or until all spots are filled. Now let's get back to today's episode.
So just to give you a couple examples, tangibly of how Something that sounds like so small or simple, like light exposure, can have such a profound effect on our hormones and our reproductive system.
I love that though. And I love that the education really helps people to take it seriously. That's what I find is when they understand the why behind it, people like my clients, like my community listening, they're so much more willing to be like, oh, okay, like this actually matters. So to
Yeah.
recap real quick, the light and dark exposure are one of the first things we can do to support the master clock being on the 24-hour clock that it's supposed to be on. We need to get morning sun exposure, afternoon sun exposure, and then dim lights as much as we can in the evening to mimic the darkness outside. Question for you on the afternoon sun exposure. I recently learned that contacts and glasses block blue light. What do I do about that? Do I like take my contacts out when I go on an afternoon walk? I need to know.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, so yes, there is. So contacts will have most contacts have like UV, different UV filters in them, essentially that can impact the absorption from the sun. However, there is still going to be ample benefits from going outside with your contacts on. From a circadian rhythm perspective, if you wanted to go like naked eyes, take the contacts off, throw your glasses on, and walk around outside, amazing. I support you. I also wear contacts, and that's
Yeah, so
not.
wait, what do you do then? What do you
Yeah.
do?
So in the morning, in the morning in particular, I'll wear my glasses, in the
Mhm.
morning, and I'll try to, pop outside and get some sunlight, with my glasses on. During the day, I just get my sunlight with my contacts on.
Okay.
And again, there is still going to be ample benefits to that light exposure, with contacts on. Um, and then, and I want to mention too that when it comes to some of these things, I always like to mention, my philosophy is tools, not rules. So we want to utilize these strategies as tools and not to approach these things in some like really intense, rigid way that ends up creating more stress, which we know is not going to help our hormones. So with light exposure in the morning, maybe you're able to get out first thing, get that bright sunlight, amazing. Maybe the way your morning is, or you have kids you're trying to get out of the house, or something going on with work that's not possible. Do the best you can, and get out when you're able to. For clients that are waking up when it's pitch black out, I'll often recommend they grab just like an inexpensive full spectrum light box that emits at least 10,000 lux. So something that kind of simulates the sun. So when they wake up, they can, pop it on, sit in front of their light and get that stimulation in terms of, light for the master clock in the brain. And same thing, like I mentioned at night with the, amber blue light blockers. So in an ideal world, would we all just be in like a beautiful candlelit environment and like chilling with no technology? Like, yeah, that sounds wonderful. But it's also, okay to enjoy a show at night, or, maybe you, here and there, you have to work a little bit later. Let's utilize these tools to support your body with the ebbs and flows of life, and not, fixate on perfection, because these small shifts make a really huge difference. There's been some great little, studies done on the amber blue light blockers too that filter out 100% of blue light in terms of significantly improving melatonin secretion, because it's the, again, the bright light that kind of tells the body that it's not nighttime, and that means melatonin is suppressed and cortisol is increased. So just even small shifts like that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put links to all of this in the show notes too, just so people know like where to go and what to get.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk next then, because I feel like we got some incredible easy tools. I love that you call it tools, not rules. We have a philosophy here. I'll ask you a question about this at the end called wellness without obsession. So obviously that beautifully aligns with that. Okay, so we know what to do about our sun exposure. What do we do about sleep and eating, and how do those specifically influence the master clock?
Yeah, great question. So, with the sleep schedule, my recommendation, and based on kind of what research suggests, is to aim to keep your sleep schedule as consistent as possible. Meaning, variability with our wake up time, with our bedtime, is a big disruptor for circadian rhythms. Again, it's confusing for the brain, confusing for the body. So, if you think about it, if we're waking up around the same time, every morning, the body is going to be prepped and primed for what it needs to do. So that external input of when we're waking up is signaling to the body that, okay, it's time to start to produce cortisol and, neurotransmitters and, kind of get the show started for the day. So when there's some consistency there, it helps the body to operate in a very rhythmic way. If there's a lot of variability with our wake time and our sleep time, that's a big disruptor to circadian rhythm. So, the body doesn't, can't anticipate and isn't primed for what it needs to do and when. The perfect example of this is oftentimes, clients will wake up at 6 a.m. every day during the work week, and then they're sleeping in until, 10 o'clock on the weekends. Mm-hmm. Come Monday morning, they feel like they got hit by a bus, right? And this is what's referred to as social jet lag, where big kind of discrepancies between habits on weekdays versus weekends actually leads to essentially jet lag, come Monday, because the body is, circadian rhythms have been disrupted. And so we feel foggy, we feel groggy and tired, our mood is off, our digestion is off. So focusing on consistency with the sleep schedule can be huge. And what I typically recommend is aiming to keep that wake up time variability to within about an hour, if possible. So, if you're waking up at 6 during the week, maybe we set our alarm and sleep till, 7 on the weekend. And I know that might sound terrible to some, individuals that are like, oh my gosh, I love like sleeping in on the weekends. However, I promise you, reducing that wake up time variability consistently feels really good in an immediate sense, in terms of, again, waking up and feeling energized and, alert, and like our digestive system is operating well, and our, hunger cues are consistent. So I always say experiment with it. Try it, do it for a couple weeks and just see how your body feels or your body responds. So reducing the variability with the wake up time can be really powerful. And same thing with the bedtime. And what I want to mention here too is that, there's going to be things that impact, the sleep schedule. You're going to a wedding, you're traveling. We don't want to get too zoomed in on sort of the one-off, life events that might be disrupting, our sleep schedule. We want to focus on really the consistent, persistent things that we're doing that are having the biggest impact on the body over time. And, don't stress about some of the situations that maybe aren't in your control, and focus on what you're doing the large majority of the time.
Yeah, beautiful advice there. Okay, what about eating? Because that one is especially huge for my people.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to eating and meal timing specifically, so meal timing is another one of those external inputs that is giving directions to the body in terms of what to do and when. So for meal timing and kind of aligning our pattern of eating with our circadian rhythms, or to optimize circadian rhythms, what I recommend is ideally, breaking your overnight fast or having something to eat soon after waking, ideally within an hour or two. And then eating really consistent meals throughout the day from there, ideally about every 3-4 hours throughout the day. So this is important for so many reasons, which I know you talk about a lot in your audience.
That's so beautifully aligned with what you recommend. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. And, so in terms of blood sugar regulation and balancing cortisol, so important. But ultimately really important for synchronizing or entraining our circadian rhythms as well. And, what has happened in our modern world is that, a lot of us wake up and we get going and skip breakfast or delay breakfast, right? We're, going a long time until we have our first meal. And then our whole kind of eating schedule is getting pushed, right? Where we're eating the large majority of our food later in the day, and we're kind of underfueling the first part of the day. So this is, again, another disruptor for circadian rhythms in terms of confusing the body, confusing the brain in terms of, this is my awake time and I'm, trying to gear up, get alert for the day. But I have no fuel, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to, kind of impact our circadian rhythms in a way that, can have that ripple effect on hormones that we're likely trying to avoid if we're trying to restore our period and support our fertility, right? So eating consistently and breaking our overnight fast earlier has so many benefits for our hormones, our metabolism, our stress response system, our immune function, all the things. So that's kind of my general recommendation with meal timing. I get asked a lot in relation to circadian rhythms, what about, eating at night or eating too close to bed? Or would you want me to kind of speak
Yeah,
to
go
that?
for
'Cause,
it. Because
um,
especially like, I mean, you're talking to people, not only does the modern world make it difficult, but also these are people who've chronically dieted their whole life. So what do chronic dieters do? They drink black coffee for breakfast, they eat a salad for lunch, and they save up more often than not, kind of a substantial nighttime snack to kind of like allow themselves to be able to eat fun foods like popcorn, like dark chocolate. And I hope what this is helping instill in them is not only is this vital to getting your period back and restoring your fertility, but in supporting your circadian rhythm, which only further enhances all of this too.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, when it comes to, eating at night, um, I find often with clients, and I don't know if you see this as well, but when we're fueling really well the first part of the day, we're breaking that fast earlier, we're eating consistently, nourishing the body well. Typically we're having dinner, maybe we have a, snack or something fun afterwards, but we're satisfied, right? When we're not kind of doing that save up situation. So the circadian rhythm alignment with meal timing kind of happens a bit more organically when we're fueling properly versus under fueling the first part of the day and then say trying to like white knuckle it and not eat later at night. So in terms of eating at night, generally having a couple hours to digest before bed can be ideal for letting your body digest and then kind of shifting into preparation for sleep mode. That being said, I always like to mention again, one, tools, not rules, and two, biological hunger trumps any external rule. So, ideally, again, we're satisfied, we feel really, well nourished throughout the day. And there's kind of naturally, organically, going to be a couple hours before bed where your body's kind of digesting, then shifting into preparing for sleep. But sometimes life just happens and, maybe we unintentionally underate the first part of the day, or maybe, we're just feeling hungrier on that day, which is totally normal. Or maybe we just want to enjoy a fun food. Maybe we're going out and, meeting a friend for ice cream or whatever it is. These are the things we don't want to stress about. So again, biological hunger always trumps any external rule. So if you are hungry, I don't care what time of day it is, we always eat. But if we are chronically hungry, at the end of the day before bed, that might be an opportunity to look at what's happening during the day to assess, okay, am I under eating? Are there long stretches of time between meals? But ultimately, being able to kind of eat during your daytime hours, nourish really well, and then, naturally have a couple hours to digest before bed, can be supportive for our circadian rhythms.
Yeah, we always tell people to be a curious, non-judgmental observer of your eating habits. And that's exactly what you're articulating here, right? Is, if you are constantly, consistently very hungry at the end of the day, that very likely just means that we simply haven't eaten enough consistently, regularly throughout the day and eaten the bulk of our calories during the day, which again, chronic dieters, people with a past with eating disorders tend to be very fearful of doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
helping them see that nourishing during the day, it supports every system in the body. It supports their metabolism, their nervous system, their hormones. It supports everything, their circadian rhythm. And also, you're just going to notice that I feel like it almost like takes care of itself. Like you don't really have to worry. Again, if you have biological hunger at the end of the day, it happens. I had a day the other day where I was so hungry and I ate normally, but we all have those days where we're just more hungry. Always listen to your body. And more often than not, by doing this and taking care of your body in this way, it just naturally, organically takes care of itself. Wouldn't you
Totally.
agree?
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
So the main things here that I'm learning from you is sun exposure and kind of mimicking the light and dark exposure of outside from the sun. Sleep and doing it consistently. That's something I've gotten better about for sure, but kids are what did that for me. I
Yeah.
don't really get to sleep in anymore. And then eating, which again beautifully aligns with period recovery work and what we encourage for our clients. Is there anything else that we need to know of like this also influence circadian rhythm?
I would say those are the biggest factors. one external factor that there's some research on, I think we're still learning a lot about is exercise and, kind of how that influences circadian rhythms. The biggest takeaway there, I would say, is, likely not doing rigorous exercise late in the evening where we're, jacking up our cortisol at a time where we want kind of, cortisol to be declining and melatonin to be increasing. But other than that, I would say, yeah, the sleep schedule, light regulation, and meal timing, these are really the core factors that, train and synchronize our circadian rhythms.
Amazing. That'd be really interesting to see too what comes out with the exercise. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, right? We want to be kind of winding down and having our entire routines kind of mimic the process of slowly going to bed, much like we do our children. And we don't want them like running a bunch and playing a bunch before
Right.
they go to bed.
Exactly.
If you had to pick one, I know this is a hard question, but if you had to pick one of the three of light and dark exposure, sleep consistency and schedule, and eating, which would you say is the biggest bang for your buck to at least begin supporting your circadian rhythm better?
Great question. So I would say light regulation is going to have the biggest influence on circadian rhythms. And I would say if we wanted to start with one thing, I would start with morning light exposure, whether it be a sun lamp, natural sunlight exposure, that makes a huge difference with really anchoring the body and supporting circadian rhythms. And I think often has such a positive snowball effect. It creates space for then kind of tackling, other tweaks and strategies. So that would probably be what I would hone in on first.
No, I so appreciate you doing that. Like, give them like one specific thing to start with. But again, we'll link to much of this in the show notes. What would you say? What is the biggest thing that they're going to notice? Give them something like, okay, like I'm going to feel this if I do this, and this is why I want to move forward thinking about my circadian rhythm. Or what would you say?
Yeah, so in an immediate sense, and I love this question because, when it comes to, restoring your period or supporting your fertility, getting pregnant naturally, obviously it's going to take some time and it might not be something that happens right in an immediate sense. So I think it's great to have some more immediate kind of measurable signs of, hey, how's my body responding? Am I moving in the right direction? Some big benefits and honing in on specifically thinking about like that morning light exposure and starting there or with, some of the other strategies we talked about. I think big benefits early on would be feeling more awake and alert, experiencing a more positive, stable mood, more stable and consistent hunger and satiety cues, better digestion and better motility. So that light exposure is huge for gut motility if you're someone that experiences with sluggish motility or constipation. So I would say those would be some of the immediate shifts. And interestingly, that morning light exposure also influence hormones released at night that help with sleep. So oftentimes, even with that morning sunlight, we start to notice feeling naturally more tired and kind of ready for bed in the evening. So those are some kind of immediate benefits that I think about that you might experience early on with some of these shifts.
Oh, I love that. Definitely good reasons to just go ahead and get started with that today. Again, we'll link to lots of this in the show notes to help get you started. Jillian, we like to ask every guest that comes on the show, our philosophy here is wellness without obsession. We want to take care of ourselves. Taking care of ourselves is fun, it's enjoyable, it helps us live long, healthy, active lifestyles, which is ultimately the goal, right? Of like health. It's meant to be help us enjoy our lives, right? But we want to do so without obsession. And I don't know about you, but I definitely have my own experience with some disordered eating and being way too obsessive. So that's where this philosophy came from. So I always like to ask every guest that comes on the show, how are you personally not only practicing, but like living wellness, but without obsession?
I love that question, and that it could not be more relevant for me right now with having a 1-year-old and just experiencing a lot of life changes in the last year that, have really kind of forced me to approach my habits differently because I don't have the time, I used to.
For
And
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
I think the biggest thing is honestly my mindset, especially this last year with focusing on imperfect action and progress over perfection. And, previously pre baby, I could have my long morning routine and do all the things. And, that's not the case for me anymore, but breaking away from that, kind of black and white thinking around, it has to be all the things in order to do that. So really allowing for imperfection and fluidity, and continuing to show up for myself. I think that's really how I can prioritize my health and wellness without kind of falling into the perfectionist tendencies.
That was the perfect answer. Thanks so much for that. Tell everyone who is listening where they can find you, work with you, learn more from you, all the places.
Yeah, so you can find me over on Instagram. My handle is Jillian Greaves RD. You can also check out our website, which is just jilliangreaves.com. You can explore all the resources, recipes that we have there, and learn a little bit more about what we do.
Awesome. Jillian, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Jillian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Thank you to my incredible community for watching this episode. I hope moving forward you are thinking very intentionally about your circadian rhythm now that you understand the impacts that it has on your health and your fertility too, how big of a difference it makes in supporting healthy hormone production. And I don't know about you, but I was so inspired after this episode to really be so much more intentional about my own circadian rhythm support on a daily basis. I can now say confidently after recording this episode, I recorded this about a month ago with Jillian, that I get my morning sun exposure, I get my afternoon sun exposure. We have red lights in all of our lamps downstairs and in our bedroom now. And finally, we also have blue light blocking amber glasses to wear in the evening. It has made such a big difference. So if you're skeptical or on the fence, just give it a go. Try one or two of these things. Start with morning sun exposure like Jillian discussed and just see, does it make a difference, especially in your sleep and how you feel on a daily basis. Thank you again, Jillian, for coming on the podcast, for being our expert today. I'm going to link y'all to all of her information, so that will be included in the show notes. And again, I want to remind you that these are the final days of our Black Friday sale for our Fertility Clarity Package. Now through Monday, December 1st, you can grab your Fertility Clarity Package for $400 off. That means for only $550, you can get a root cause investigation complete with advanced labs and a custom roadmap explaining exactly what's causing your missing or an irregular period, causing your current fertility frustrations, and know exactly what your next steps are so that you can confidently move into 2026 knowing that this is going to be the year that you get your period back, restore your fertility, and get pregnant. There are only a handful of spots left, so if you want yours, I would definitely do so before Monday just to guarantee that you can get one. The link to purchase will be in our show notes. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving week. We'll be back in 2 weeks as always. Until next time, know that a nourished body is a powerful one.